Outraged parents protesting after liberal New York Mayor Bill de Blasio announced he wants to scrap admissions testing to make elite high schools more diverse.
We have to make a major change. We have to make sure the very best high schools are open to every New Yorker. Every kind of New Yorker. They need to look like New York City.
De Blasio saying that 20% of school placements should go to low-income students who narrowly missed the cutoff. That's the plan now. He wants to go even further than that. But since when has academic achievement needed to be policed? That's the question this morning. Here now to debate it is New York Councilman Joe Borelli and author and mother Emma Johnson. Guys, thanks so much for coming on this morning. Emma, I want to start with you. I'm going to give you a quote here from an assemblyman here in New York, Jeff Dinowitz. He's a Democrat from the Bronx. He said the current exam, which is a specialized high school admissions test, is 100% objective. Nobody is saying it's culturally biased. That coming from a Democrat.
Well, that's right, but obviously it is when we have the majority of the kids in these schools are Asian, followed by white. When we, in actuality, in the city, the majority of kids in our public schools are Latino and African American. I'm not worried about those 20% of kids that previously got into the schools but now are not going into. Those kids are going to be fine. What I'm concerned about is the greater good. When those schools are diverse, there's so many studies that show in schools and in the workplace and in our communities, when there is diversity, that is good for all of us. And all that Blasio is doing is keeping up with the times. That test is irrelevant. Standardized testing is increasingly irrelevant, and he is making a new policy that is going to benefit not only all of those kids in those schools, but all New Yorkers.
She says she's not worried about the 20% of kids that won't get in. What do you say?
Those are specifically the kids that I'm worried about. There are 800, 900 or so kids that grew up in economically disadvantaged homes. The majority of the kids in these schools are 3-4 times the economic disadvantage rate of the state. These are kids who are in most cases Asian, most cases are immigrants themselves. They're the parents of cab drivers. They're first-generation Americans. They have language barriers at home, and they study their butts off, and they work, they compete, and they nail this test. And they get to go on to some of the 8 best high schools, not just in our city and in our country. These are specifically the kids we have these schools for, and these schools should be the models on which we build 8 more schools just like it.
One person said that the mayor is going to pit minority versus minority because, as he said, most of these schools are primarily Asian, these best schools, these best high schools, and now they want to replace the Asian American students with black and Hispanic students.
Well, it's a matter of race, but it's about economic background and not just the family background. It's not just about the cab drivers and those hardworking immigrants. It's about the schools. There's zone schools that those kids go to. And there is so much research. This is not just me editorializing. There's so much research that shows the quality of your local zone school. It sets you off on your trajectory in life. And we're not, look, we are not, we've been trying to figure out how to equalize education in this country since the dawn of this country. We haven't figured it out. But if we can change the admissions test for these very high profile schools, there's a problem. De Blasio is coming up with a very reasonable solution to try to evolve as education changes, as the demographics of the city changes, and I don't think it's at all radical or unreasonable, and it's in the spirit of what is best for all New Yorkers, not 800 kids.
And Joe, I know you want to jump in, but I want to give you one thing real quick. The mayor's saying that Asian American students sometimes have more money and can better prepare for this test and the admission into these high schools, these 8 elite high schools. What do you say to that?
Preparation for a test is part of the work that goes into making one of these schools. I mean, that's part and parcel of it. But the truth is that, you look at a school like Brooklyn Tech, they have 60% or 59% economically disadvantaged students. That's 4 times the state average. So it's a myth to say that these schools are not diverse. Asia is a very big continent. There's a very big diverse population going into these schools. And basically, it's almost insulting that we're going to penalize 800 kids that have otherwise succeeded simply because they don't meet some, central planner's idea of the right diverse makeup for a school. These kids aren't coming from Mars. They're coming from the same public school system as every other kid.
They're coming from a handful of the best middle schools. They're not coming from a diverse cross-section of middle schools.
All right, we got to leave it there. It's a very liberal, very progressive idea, even so much so the governor doesn't seem to be very much behind this. We'll see how it turns out, this plan. Guys, thanks so much for coming on this morning.
Thank you.